Hi guys, it's Kelly here, and I am thrilled to be participating in the My Monthly Hero blog hop today. So these are some add-ons I'm going to be using. I'm using the Fun in the Rain stamp set and then the Nesting Clouds Infinity dies. These are super cool. They come in all different sizes, and I've cut a couple here. I know I want them to be at the top of my card, so I'm just laying them in place before I do my stamping to make sure that I have room for all the characters that I want to use, because these little animals playing in the rain were just so darling. So I'm going to be doing some ink blending, so as I am stamping them, I'm going to be masking. I tried a couple of different cards, which is why my mask is already dirty here, but they're just full stick post-it notes. I just trim those out. So everybody's masked here. I didn't worry about the puddles because they were already going to be blue. So I'm putting on some Salty Ocean, working from the bottom about, I don't know, about halfway up the card. And then once I was happy with how much I had down, I went ahead and added just a little bit to the top. This isn't really going to matter at the end of it. I am going to have the clouds at the top, but I wanted there to be something that was peeking out from behind. And then I'm also going to add some blueprint sketch just at the bottom of the card to make it just a teeny tiny bit darker. So I really didn't go very far up at all, just maybe to the bottoms of the animals. Then we'll just get right into the Copic coloring. I removed all of my masks. I'm going to be using a brighter blue combination for my water. I'm going to be coloring in the puddles. I'm sorry about that elephant. He's kind of hanging off the bottom. At some point I'll figure it out and kind of scoot him up, but I think it's more toward the end of the coloring, unfortunately. So in a couple of these, in the puddles underneath the pig, it's part of his stamp. The other puddle I added underneath the elephant and the duck. So with the elephant, there wasn't really any point of adding kind of any rings or anything. With the duck, I just did it with my marker. There is an extra stamp that's in the set where you could stamp down the water ringlets into the puddle. I just didn't think it was necessary, and I wasn't sure it was going to line up with his feet. So I just, like I said, decided to do it with the marker. And I just took from the darkest color underneath their feet out to the lightest color around the edges. And then I'm going to start working on the animals. So I picked some pretty light yellows for my duck here, even though the yellows are kind of hard, because even the lightest ones are still pretty bright. That color that I had just used was a Y000. It only gets like one lighter than that, but it's still pretty bright. So for the shading, the darkest color is going to be a Y26, and it does look more of a brown, but it really is more of a gold color. And I'm making sure that I add that underneath the layers of his wings, and I'm kind of extending out the lines that are already there. I'm also making sure that I add some shading where he is behind the pig, just to give him a little bit of depth. The way that I color things when I color with a light source is everything comes from the top right. That's just what's comfortable for me. So the lightest part on him will be his back. I didn't do any shading on his beak or his legs. They were just too small of an area, so I just colored those in orange. And then I'm going to move on to the elephant. So this actually went pretty quick because I had previously colored him. That's why my mask was dirty. That card I didn't really love, so, back to the drawing board. Here, even though he is facing the sun, his face and everything is going to be lighter, but he still is going to have some shading where his legs are, where his belly is, because he's kind of hunched over his belly, and definitely where his trunk is kind of coming up. And so normally I start with my lightest color and work out to my darkest, and then darkest back out to my light. With this one, I didn't. I started with my darkest color because, like I said, I had previously colored it, so I kind of knew where I wanted all of my shadows to be. So once those were down, I'm going to start kind of blending out. His ear is folded over on itself, so there's also going to be some shading there, even though it's facing into the sun. I added just some lighter shading underneath his chin. there's a lot of times when doing shadows, we don't really know where those things should go. And it will help sometimes if you look at an object in actual light. So if you set something down and then put your light source, obviously something that's a little bit taller, but then put your light source where you would want it to go, then you can see how that light hits, and that's really helpful to kind of see when you're coloring where those shadows would go. So here, the C1 kind of blended out my C3 more than I wanted it to, so I'm just going to go back in and add a little bit of that. I picked a really light red for his ears and the inside of his mouth because it is open, holding that little umbrella. And then we're going to move on to the pig. These were, this is not as bright as a pink as I normally use, but I felt like it would work really well for my cute little pig. I keep wanting to call him Wilbur. He's just so cute, but he's also facing away from the sun. So the darkest parts on him will be his face and the underneath of his belly. And I only used 3 colors for him because his back was almost like white. The darkest color is an EO4, which looks kind of strange, but just trust me on this, because once we put the other pinks over it, it really will blend out really nicely. So this one I did the traditional way that I normally color, is I put the shadows in with my lightest color, worked out to my darkest, and then back into my lightest. But you can see that EO4, even though it's a substantially darker color than the RV11, it really does blend nicely. And I used that same light red to put a little bit of shading in his ear. To kind of tie all of my little guys together, I decided to make all of their accessories the same color, so that there was some flow throughout the card. For the umbrella, because, it's obviously we're just playing in a rainstorm, it's going to be wet, but also because they're typically made out of shiny material, I'm leaving little triangles for a highlight. So the darkest part on the the darkest part will be on the left-hand side. And then the underneath of the umbrella will also be darker. And then this is just my favorite red combination. I try to make sure that I add some shading to each one of the little sections, so that they are kind of separated from each other and it doesn't look like one large piece. And then, just go back through blending. I'm adding color little by little to those triangles, but I'm not adding a ton until the second time through, because I want to make sure that I still have some white areas. Just because if you leave a white area, it's a really strong highlight. And then they're both wearing galoshes. I mean, how stinking cute is this? They're both wearing galoshes, which I just absolutely adore. And so I colored both of them red. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know if I did the shading right. I just kind of did what I felt made sense. So I left a highlight on the back of the duck's boot where the sun would be hitting it. That was the easiest part for figuring out where the highlight should be. But for the duck, I felt like with his foot sticking out, there might be a little bit of a highlight. And then the same thing with the pig with his, his left leg. I thought that, with him, I didn't think it would be directly on top of it, that there might maybe be a little bit of a highlight on the toe. And so that's how I colored it. But if like I said, I don't even necessarily know that that's right or accurate. That's just the way that I thought that it would look. If you don't like the way that looks, then just color the whole thing dark. Just color the whole thing dark, because the light source would be from the back. Leave the highlights on the right-hand side where the light source is coming from. So just going to go back through real quick and blend those out so that I didn't want the highlights to be as strong. I didn't want bright white highlights, but I did want there to be some differentiation between them. And then I'm just going to give them like a little street-ish area. I felt like they were just kind of like floating around. And here's where I'm going to add in my shadows. I'm starting with a C3, and and the light source is coming from behind them. So from their feet out, I mean, and they don't even have to be specific shapes. Like mine are just kind of like oval-ish. But it really does give something to the card to add to the way that it comes together. And so I blended it out with the C1. Then I felt like the shadows got a little too light that you couldn't see them. So I'm going to go back in and add in a little bit of that dark. And then later on, I'm even going to go back in and add some more. I forgot when I was doing the elephant, I forgot to get the umbrella handle. And then I also felt like he needed to be just a little bit darker. So don't feel like, I don't know, I guess don't feel like you're married to things. Like you can tweak them and change them as you go along. It doesn't have to be something that's like the be all end all. It's not like you can't ever go back. So I colored in his little toes white with a gel pen, and then I also added polka dots to my umbrella and then both of the galoshes, which it's just a little detail I like to add. Here I'm going to go in with the R35, and just to the darkest areas I'm going to go over those white gel pens. Word on the street is this can ruin your nibs. I have never had that problem, but do that at your own risk. I like to outline all of my images just because I like a bold outline. I feel like it kind of makes the colors pop and makes my images pop. This is, again, a totally optional step. All these steps are optional. I mean, really, just stop wherever you're happy with your card. It's your card. It's not anybody else's. So as long as you're happy with it, that's all that really matters. So once everything was outlined, I realized that the shadows needed to be darker. So now I'm going in with a C5. And really, I'm just concentrating that closer to the animals. Their shadows would be darker closer to them, blending it out with the C3, and then I liked the stronger shadow a ton better. I wanted there to be an actual light source, so I'm using my ruler and a light yellow pencil. I realize I'm running the risk of it going green, but I'm just going to do some sun rays. Here's the problem. I use my T-square ruler to outline a ton of stuff. And because of that, there was black on the edge of my ruler, which you can now see on my card. That wasn't ideal. I wanted them to be kind of more no line, but it's fine. We're just going to work with it. The whole card isn't ruined. It's all right. So I'm going in with that lightest yellow and just coloring in every other ray so that there would be just some sun rays peeking out from behind those clouds. It kind of matched the sentiment, and I really liked that. So I just added a little bit of stronger shading you're barely going to see it. Once I put the clouds on, it will barely be seen. But now, even though I didn't want to do it this way, I'm going to go in with that same writing pen and then just kind of outline the rays so that it makes sense. I'm pushing much harder at the top, and I'm kind of lifting my pen up as I slide it down so that the lines aren't as bold. I'm going to start adhering those nesting clouds, which I just think is so much fun because there's so many different sizes. Like if you wanted to do a full cloud card, you totally could. The biggest size is absolutely something that would be a whole card. I decided to, after I adhered the first two, to go ahead and trim that off because I didn't want to be cutting through just layers and layers of paper. It can be hard to keep a nice edge. So then this is the last layer, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that off so everything is even. We're all good to go. And then before I was done, I just wanted to add just a little bit of shading to the clouds. I felt like they were just kind of blending in together a little more than I wanted to. Plus, they are supposed to be kind of storm clouds. So I just used a C1 to kind of trace the edge and then feather that into the cloud that was below it. And because I wanted a really, really soft look, I also went back in with the zero marker. The zero marker isn't just for fixing mistakes. It can be your friend to get kind of the effect that you want. So I just went over those gray lines real quick just to blend them in. And then we're going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment. This is adorable. I think it's just a great way to encourage people. And it says, we'll weather this together. And I just think that it matched kind of like the little sun rays and all the little animals playing together. That no matter what your struggle is, you have people that love you, and so I have plenty of people in my life that I can send this to and just be encouraging, which I totally love. So I added some clear sequins, and then that is the whole card. Please head over to the blog for details, and if you're watching this in the week of February 6th, maybe a chance to win the My Monthly Hero kit. Thank you so much for joining me. I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.